welcome to today's webinar, Never Ending Referrals for Market Centers Info Session with MAPS coach, Steve Schlueter. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours on the MAPS Fast Track YouTube channel. You may access the YouTube channel from your Zoom confirmation email, and we will also share the link in the chat momentarily. Currently, everyone's on mute. We do value group participation, so we ask that if you have any questions for your coach, please type them into the chat box below and they will be addressed throughout the webinar. Following this meeting, if you have any questions about today's call or our coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That is fasttrack@kw.com. And that's all for me, Steve. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Rodrigo. Hey, welcome leadership. Thank you for tuning in today to find out a little bit more about bringing never-ending referrals into your market center. My name's Steve Schlueter, and I'm a MAPS coach, I'm operating principal, multi-market center owner. I'll tell you a little bit more about my background here in a little bit, but I sit in your shoes. I understand what we are doing to work every day to get our agents productive. And I'd like to start off with just giving you a little bit of foundation about our program called Never Ending Referrals. In fact, let me do something real quick here. I'm going to spotlight me. There we go. I want to give you a little foundation for this program. And I think when you hear the foundation, you'll understand the passion around it, because you've probably experienced some of the same challenges that I've had the opportunity to witness now for, well, way too many years. And to give you a little foundation on Never Ending Referrals, its history, its background, we go back to, well, the Great Recession. And, you know, the Great Recession was on, and Tony DeCello, if anybody, you know him, great coach, Tony DeCello and I are out on the Shift book tour. Gary had asked Tony to take Shift on the road. I was his backup for the Central US and East Coast. And so Tony and I took off. We went on the road. And our first stop was Chicago. It's a Marriott O'Hare. And we had about 700 people in the room. And, you know, these are people here that are learning how to shift. What do I do in the midst of this massive market change that we were going through? And we got to the afternoon portion of the session, which was focused on relationships, and it was focused on agents' databases. And here's what happened. In fact, and I'll ask you a question in the chat. If you'll kind of man your chat box, I'm going to ask you a question. We'll do a little participating today. This is not going to be me just talking at you. And yet, Tony addresses the crowd. We get into the situation, or the section on database. And he asked the question, he said, how many of you are touching your Met database 28 to 33 times a year? Now, remember, MREA was originally 33 touch. And to our surprise, only 15% of the room stood up. And then Tony asked a clarifying question. He said, how many of you by remaining standing, are communicating face-to-face or over the phone with those people in your database at least 4 times a year? And in the chat, I'd like you to just take a guess. What percent do you think was left standing of that room when Tony asked that clarifying question? And were they doing a pure 33 touch? Let's see if we can get some participation going here. Stephanie, 1%. Yeah. David, 5%. Lee, okay, 7%. There's an optimist, 10%. I love it. Okay, thank you. How about 3%? And Tony and I, guys, we tested this room after room, city after city, unfortunately, month after month and year after year. And this thing called we called it the 3% crisis, kept showing up. It kept exerting itself. And we really did view it as a crisis, because this is the #1 business asset, as you and I all know, that our agents have the potential to have. And yet, here's my question. If you go into your market center today, what do you think the percentage would be that have a pure 36 touch running, and they're having a quarterly conversation, or at least 2 conversations a year. And what do you think that number is? I mean, have you done the study? And if you did it, what do you think it is? In fact, put it in the chat. What do you think it might be in your market center today? So we're still saying it could be a crisis. Mary, I know Mary Atkins Bell probably has 20% because she's been adhering to DTD2 and those things for a long time. I know, Mary, you've run never ending referrals in your market centers in the past. So, and by the way, 15%, 10%, we don't know what it is in your market center. It's low. We know database adoption at the highest level is low. And why is it low? I've got some thoughts, and here would be a couple of thoughts I would share with you. First off, continuing with the background is, after that experience, Tony and I kept looking for answers. We said, what's the way through this? How do we change this? And frankly, the answers weren't showing up. And it hit me as a bold coach. It hit me in a room one day about 2013, 2012, 2013, when we started. We had a small little section on database at the time in bold. And it had this little strategy for calling 2 letters of the alphabet a week, and you get through your database every 13 weeks. And I had asked the question of the room, about 4 years into coaching bold, I said, how many of you are doing this? And the answer in 3 rooms was 0, 0, and 0. And we had such a small little conversation around database. And honestly, we did this to ourselves for quite a while. We were teaching agents to be transactional, to circle prospect, to go chase expireds, to go chase for sale by owners, to just flat knock on cold doors. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And yet it was leaving our agents at a place where every January 1, they had to start back at 0. And they had to ask themselves the question, can I do it again? And the mission for us became, we've got to create a program. By the way, what we started in my market centers at that time was we took that 2-letter idea and we turned it to something called DTD2. You may have heard of this if you've taken bold. It's something we loaned from Never Ending Referrals to bold. It's become a real part of the conversation out there. And the reason we gamified it with these 2-letter groups was to create a conversation that we kept having around our agents. And so the challenge for us today, if we're going to wildly shift our associates to having a relationship-based business, it's going to take us having this conversation around our agents frequently, regularly, intentionally, and with purpose, and giving them a system to build it around. And that's what I'm going to introduce you to today, is what is that foundation that we can equip our agents with that's going to give them the consistent success. And I know we're all, many of us are going to mega leadership, and I'll see you there. If you're there, come seek me out. We can talk even more about your specific situation or circumstances with your market centers. As we get into this, getting clear that this has got to be something that's so foundational that we talk about all the time. Many of us are pursuing Rise or Team Bridge or some of these conversations, and we're looking at those in our market centers as well. And yet the Rise program, the decision we've made is we're only going to involve agents in the Rise Lead program under a couple of standards. And one is they must have their database built properly. They must have a 36 touch campaign or the 40 touch campaign that's ready to run. Because if we go out and get bought leads, if you will, be dependent on somebody else for business, we don't want to pay for that lead and just get 1 transaction. We want to pay for that lead and get 4 to 6 to 8 transactions over time, counting referrals. And the NAR statistics say that doesn't happen enough because agents aren't keeping in touch. So that's a standard we're choosing to put in place with these programs, because we want that to be, in fact, Jason Abrams calls it the short leg. The short leg is, okay, you're investing in some leads possibly, and yet the end game, we're building this into relationships that pay off dividends over time. And if you're just doing it short leg, that's really not a place you want to be, because that stuff may not be sustainable. It may not stick around, and they may start charging more, and we no longer want to be in that position. So here's what I want to ask you to open up today, because I want to make sure I'm addressing your needs and concerns. And I'd love for a couple of you guys to chime in and share with me, what is your experience with, database in your market centers? What problems or challenges or opportunities are you looking to develop or solve, and that brought you here to this conversation today? So feel free to unmute yourself, be part of the conversation. Who's in?
I have a question or a statement,
Hey.
I guess. Hi,
Hey, Leanne.
how are you?
Good.
Good. So I am really involved with my database, constantly talking to them, constantly texting them, emailing them. That's all good. I didn't do the 36 touch plan because I'm just very personal with them. Now I know as my business gets bigger, I will not be able to sustain that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I am very relational, not as much transactional. So I don't know how to scale that, because I'm really close with them. Well, yeah, I mean, they wish me happy birthday. Like they seek me out. Like I know when they're ready, like they're going to use me. Like I'm very close with a lot of my database. So, but I know I need to make it bigger and scale it. And I'm not entirely sure how to go from, you know what I'm saying?
Well, in fact, let me share something with you guys, real quick, because Lee, I'm going to come back to that in just a second, because scaling it is, we interviewed a gentleman on Never Ending Referrals, 3 weeks ago, and his name is David Huffaker. If anybody knows David Huffaker, he runs a very substantial sales practice in Middle Tennessee, and 100+ million in sales. And it's built on, it's scaled on relationships. His expansion teams even are scaled on relationships. And so as his databases got bigger, as his expansion agents got bigger, they followed the models of Never Ending Referrals and scaled it through team members and even an ISA. I mean, you guys have, certain categories of relationship, and it may be at the point where I can only personally communicate, or our agents can only personally communicate with their advocates and core advocates. And then it becomes, instead of this whole world we used to call ISAs, they become account reps for 1,000 people of your database. And when they call, they're doing business in the agent's name. Hey, Leanne asked me to let you know. Leanne wanted you to know. Leanne wanted me to get in touch with you and asked. And that would be one way of scaling. But let me get into this solution of this product, because what we're here today to talk about is how we bring into our market centers a platform for our agents to solve this crisis of low database adoption, of low relationship engagement and adoption. And Leanne, I'm going to answer your question as we go, if that's okay. And so as we get into this, I want to share some. I want to put on my document camera for a second. And you may have heard this. Let me see if I can get that to cooperate. Let's see. All right, here we are. And so you may have seen this if you take in leadership fundamentals. I watched Gary Keller and Jay Papasan having a conversation a while back around something called the trust triangle. And the trust triangle is this. It's logic. In fact, draw this out if you're not familiar with this. Empathy and authentic you. And what the trust triangle, by the way, this comes from the Harvard Business Review. And what they said was when you have built into the relationship, they experience logic, and we'll talk about how logic shows up. They experience empathy and they experience the authentic you. Then you have trust. And the most important thing we really have to do for our agents is help them develop a strategy that helps them do this with scale with many relationships, not just family and friends, network, sphere of influence, business to business relationships in the community. And so the logic part, if you want to write this down, the logic part is they know that your reasoning and judgment are sound. They know that your reasoning and judgment are sound. In other words, they see our agents as professionals, not just friends. They see their body of work, and they see that through their marketing campaign, through their 36 touch. They see something like like an infographic postcard that they're getting from the agent with interpreting the market and what that means, or they're getting the newsletter or the e-newsletter that's positioning that agent as the local real estate economist, as Gary would say. So the logic part does the heavy lifting of saying, even for a newer agent, man, they really look like they know what they're talking about. And that's often a struggle for a new agent to look that way because they don't have experience yet. And so, and by the way, what we're talking about is not just for new agents. I just did Never Ending Referrals in one of my market centers here. We wrapped up day before yesterday, and I had seasoned veterans in that room, with tens of millions of dollars of production, refining this, because there's so many people that are running transactionally and have not taken advantage of this part of their business. But let's go to the empathy part. The empathy part says the question that has to answer, or that what they experience is, you care about me and my well-being, or you care about me and my success. And then the authentic you is, we teach people in Never Ending Referrals how to do this, how to connect with a database in a way that is authentically them. The example would be, I'm an extremely high assertive personality. I'm what people would call a high D, all the way to the top, or on the KPA, I'm a high assertive. And because of that, the way I'm going to succeed with my database is not going to be like Leanne. It's not me being everybody's best friend. I don't want to do that. I don't want to call and ask about Fluffy the cat and what's going on. And, it's not the conversation I would choose to have. And yet, very early in my career, one of my mentors said, Steve, the way you really succeed in this business is be friends with all your clients. And I got to tell you, that was anxiety provoking for me, because simply that idea was such that when she said that, my internal voice said, I got 4 friends. I don't need more friends. I need more buyers and sellers. And thank God, at the time I started my real estate practice, expireds were abundant, and I was making a real thriving living on expireds and for sale by owners. And yet when the market shifted, I had remembered what she had said, and I had built a database, and I had put those names in a system. And fortunately, I went to a seminar at our local board where a gentleman talked about one of the agents that he called one of his stars, who positioned herself as the trusted advisor. And I heard that, and I said, I can be that person. I can't be everybody's best friend, and yet I can be their trusted advisor. And so the journey we're taking your agents on in Never Ending Referrals is to, how do they succeed with their behavior, the way they're wired? How do they build a robust database that's going to give them that predictable, repeatable business? And what I'm going to do in a moment, I'm going to walk you through just kind of what the product is. Is anybody, who's taken Never Ending Referrals here, that if you were to describe it, rather than me describe it, you come on and describe it. How would you describe Never Ending Referrals?
I'll jump on, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Garrett.
I took it as, I'm a team leader now, but I took it as an agent. And for me, I had a lot of anxiety about what to do with my database. I was born in Keller Williams, so I knew I had to touch it 33 times, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to call without just being like, a lot of anxiety around that, as many others. And it was actually my favorite class I took from Bold and from Ignite and all in between, because it made it easy in strategies to call my database once a quarter without feeling like I was calling my database with that anxiety. I think the first one was about calling about vendors, and I was like, this is the most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It gave me an easy way to call, asking for vendors, and then to call the vendor. And I remember doing that through the first quarter, through the A's and the W's, and I was like, this made it so much easier to figure out a way to call without having that anxiety, and giving me strategies around it. So for me personally, it took it away from being a salesperson to teaching you to be a person of value to your database consistently throughout the year, without sounding, over the top, like you're just begging for business. So.
Wow. Thanks, Garrett. I need to send you $50 for that one. Hey, wow. Well, thank you. Well, and that's the mission that we're on. Anybody else want to chime in about your experience with Never Ending Referrals? And, how would you describe it from an agent's perspective? Maybe you've taken it, or you've presented as a productivity coach or a team leader. Anybody else?
I'll go, Steve, because I love this program, and we've been running it.
Hey, Tammi.
Hey, we've been running it for several years. And the way we promote it is a systematic way to grow your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you grow your business and helps you gain time by following the systems. So that's our one-liner or tag, because it's about relationships. And we don't necessarily, though, offer it for our new agents, right? Because DTD2 is included in Ignite and all that. We use this course for what we call our mid-grade folks, those who've already capped and or are looking to go from 2 to 10 million, or 10 million to 20 million, or 20 to 30. So we use it as an opportunity for those agents to really grow their relationships and not be so transactional.
Well, and what's great about that, Tammi, is that agents do hit that natural ceiling of achievement. And most agents start off early just chasing every shiny object, rather than focusing on the relationships and who they have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and
thank
then
you. The event thing is our favorite, right? Because again, like you said, it's about vendors and events, and so many of our agents we found weren't doing them systematically. And I think that's why we use that word, a systematic way to grow your relationships, grow your business, and gain time.
Perfectly. And we did get your email, and I'll be in touch with you this afternoon. Okay.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Thanks.
Go.
So let's go into this a little bit. Thank you. And I want to kind of walk you through what the product is. I know that in the email we sent out, we sent just a video clip of a sampling of a Never Ending Referral session. And I want to show you kind of what the tool is and how it works. And I guess to help you understand what we did here is that when we first, Never Ending Referrals is now in its 4th ideation. And when we launched the group coaching program in 2014, it was an individual program for agents to take with us directly. And we still have that program, and agents can do that. And yet here was, as a group coach, I'm sitting here on the other end of a monitor and a camera. And, I've got 100, 200, 300 people out there in a program. I can't see if they're doing the work. And, as Garrett was speaking to, Tammi was speaking to, the breakthroughs come when they get into action. And I said, we started looking at this and said, let's build a market center edition that can be facilitated locally that assures that the agents start to apply what we're teaching. And so it builds an accountability element. And so what we did is we built a platform that it's a lesson lab format for each class. So meaning it's not just sit and listen to a webinar for an hour or an hour and a half. They're going to have some instruction, and then the facilitator is going to take and lead them through an activity that's mostly done in groups where they're masterminding or they're getting into triads and practicing. And they'll have the typical session will have 3 to 4 labs where they actually get into action. And there's a scorecard and a scoreboard and all these things involved. But let me go and show you the product. And this will kind of give you a good sense of what to expect. I know in the email, we put out an outline of the 6 lessons. In fact, if you don't have that, we'll drop it in the chat here in a minute. Megan, if you'll drop that in the chat, just the outline of the 6 sessions of Never Ending Referrals. But let's go to, let me go to screen share for you. See if I can find what I'm looking for. There we go. And so when you enroll for Never Ending Referrals for market centers, you'll have this dashboard. It'll be on what's called a learning management system, and you'll have access to Never Ending Referrals for market centers. And your dashboard will look like this. And you've got some promotional resources here where you've got the overview flyer for the 6 sessions. You've got the banner for the DTD2 graphics that you can put up in your market center or people can put up in their workspace. There's a promotional video. When you click on this, it can be played here from the portal, or there's a YouTube link down here so that you can embed it into a resource that you might be sending out to your associates. Let me go back here. But let's take a look. Let's say you're getting, and of course, we've got everything from a facilitator training video that prepares you on how to facilitate the program. But then we get to the point where you're ready to facilitate. You're ready to bring Never Ending Referrals for market centers into your training room. And by the way, this would be 6 sessions. Each session runs about 2.5 hours with time for a 10 to 15 minute break. And when you get ready to implement this, you're simply going to click here on your session 1, and where it says session 1 video guides, workbook, and resources. And you'll play the video right out of the portal. You'll just go full screen, play the video, and you'll notice that on this portal spot, you've got all these downloads over here on the right. So session 1 has a few downloads because you've got a lot of foundation you're setting in session 1. So you've got the DTD2 schedule, you've got the workbook, you've got your facilitator's guide, and I'll show you what these look like in just a minute. You have the scorecard for the student, you've got the scoreboard for the front of the room, a peer partner agreement. So there's a lot of stuff. And then in future sessions, you just have the workbook and you have the facilitator's guide. Bear with me just a moment. Thank you. So let's take a look at, and by the way, all the video work has been done by a high-end cinematographer. The person that does our work actually does contract work for Keller Williams Realty International. So some of that stuff you see at Mega Camp with cool graphics and sound and everything. Well, that's the quality of the video, but it's not overproduced. It's very conversational and it's very connecting in nature as far as that goes. So you've got the portal. So we finished session 1. Once we're done with session 1, the next week we'll come in and I'll just scroll to session 2. Click on here. There's the video ready to go, and I've got my workbook and my facilitator's guide, all of that right here ready to go. Each thing has a description of what we're covering. And what, of course, we encourage you to do, whoever's facilitating, is to make sure they've gone through all of this in advance. Now you notice session 2 is 59 minutes and 32 seconds worth of video, and yet the class is going to take 2.5 hours. And so all the in between is the agents being in action, practicing what they're learning, having conversation and dialogue based upon what the lesson is for that week. Excuse me, folks. One moment. I guess I get choked up talking about all this. So there you go. So let me go through and show you an example of what the facilitator tools look like to kind of give you some perspective there. Let's see, here we go. Here you see the outline of the 6 sessions. And this is something you can share with your associates. It's in the downloads on the portal. But here you are. Let's just take a look at session 2. So here's session 2, the workbook. And as you see in session 2, we get into who am I being for my database. And this is all about their behavior style, managing through their behavioral style to be successful in working a relationship-based business. And so there's a review of what was covered the previous week, and you're clearing that out in the room. We get into understanding their behavior and how to spot behavior and how to use their behavior effectively. And here we start to deal with the behavioral myths. You take the assertive. The assertive says, I can't be successful with my database because I hate all those silly small talk conversations. And the truth is they don't need to be their friend. They need to be their trusted real estate advisor. And so we take them through, because here's the truth. And I know you know this, guys. Every single behavioral styles has some kind of hang up on why calling their database or connecting with their database or their sphere of influence is a challenge. The high social doesn't like rejection, and so even that becomes a challenge. Here we got, let me make this a little larger so you can see this. And here would be a session 2 facilitator's guide. So you'll notice that it gives you some of the questions for engagement for clearing out the previous week. We tell you, and you're going to go complete the scorecard. And then the first lab is the setup for the lab is between the 1041 and 1425 mark. If you want to go back and review that again, you know exactly where to find it. And it tells you how to set up the lab and what to do in the lab. And of course, we're going to set it up in the video. And yet this just gives you additional instruction and insights on how to make it a great lab segment of that particular session. Then we have the next lab here within session 2, which is an active listening exercise around acknowledging and validating, helpful skill in dealing with objections and things that come up with their clients. The next lab is a social media lab where we take them through what we call the CARE strategy, which is connect, alert, refer, and engage. And they mastermind some of the strategies that they'll use around their social media. And then you have a final lab, which is the wrap up and leading them through their action items. And then every session has a one thing. And the one thing for this particular session was apply categories to this and next week's DTD2 groups. This will offer them the clarity of the value of the context in the next week's group. So that's the facilitator's guide. And there's a sample of the scorecard that they would have. So we're going to make sure that they're keeping score, and they got that week's DTD2 group based upon the DTD2 schedule at the top. So those are some of the tools that are a part of the program. And let me pause for a minute. And are there any questions? And then I'll kind of go into how you bring this into your market center. Any yeehaws, yippies, or woohoos? Garrett's got his thumbs up, so I like that. Thank you, Garrett. Yeah. All right. So
You
let's.
mentioned that it was 6. What were the 2 that were taken out?
None were taken out, Tabby. You know, we essentially, that's where the 2.5 hours is coming from. We made the
merged it.
we merged it together, because here's the thing we run into. I don't know about y'all, keeping people engaged in anything for 8 weeks is a bear. Fair statement? Yeah. And so we said, okay, now 6 weeks, that's as tight as we could condense it. And we said, okay, we can go 2.5 hours if we put a break in there. And because typically under the previous ideation of this, I don't know what you were doing them in, Tabby. Some people could do them, you know, other than session 1, some people could do them in 90 minutes to 2 hours. And so that's where the extension to 2.5 hours is how we did it. And it really gets some of the content that you want to have front loaded in earlier to really accelerate them. So I wish we had done this a long time ago. It was the right move. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions before I tell you how to do this? All right, so how do you bring this to your market center? Megan, if you'll drop the link in the chat to the MAPS coaching site. Now, Tabby, when you were doing this and in your market center, you know, we had $4.99 a month was the what do we call it? The subscription to Never Ending Referrals for market centers, and it was a 12-month commitment. And now today, what we've done is we've built it on a per use basis. So you go in and you register for it on the MAPS website at the link that we'll put in here shortly. Here, I'll put it in there right there. You register your market center. The cost to bring this in your market center, the investment is $1,398, and it gives you access to it for 12 weeks. So you have access to it for a quarter. And if you want to run it twice in a quarter, you can do that. If you want to run it 3 times in a quarter, different groups, you can do that. Maybe you got one on the weekend and you've got one, you know, for your mid-range group, and maybe you even have a top agent, you know, top 20% group that you're running it with. You run it as many times as you want. And we give you 12 weeks because we want you to have time with the materials beforehand, run the program. You might have a week break in there for, well, what do we have coming up? We've got Red Day coming up. We've got, you know, Mega Leadership this next week. You might have some disruption where you wind up skipping a week. So you've got plenty of time to run the program. And then, you know, and of course, just in case there's unforeseen delays. And if there's anything weird, you need an extra week, just let us know. We'd figure that out. And by the way, it's payable at $466 a month for over three months. And then if you're don't run it again for another 6 months, you just go resubscribe again for another 12-week period, and you run it as you go. Now, here's what we just did in our own market center. We charged $49 per person to participate. And we had right at 40 people in the last one we just did. And so if you think about that, that's like a couple of $1,000. And that allowed us to provide a nice 3-ring binder, all color printed, you know, put together for them. And we only gave them 1 week at a time. And, you know, that's usually the best move. Keep them focused on one thing. And so you can absolutely do this zero base. And what we would recommend as the best practice, I don't know, Tabby, how many times a year do you think you ought to run this in a market center?
Well, Steve, we actually were running it every other month because we did 2 sessions a week. Mm-hmm. Again, it was based on 8 sessions. So we did 2 sessions, 4 weeks. Then we do Ignite. Then we do Never Ending Referrals. Then we do Ignite. So we actually were running it 6 times a year.
Yeah. And so
probably a little much.
You've made it a staple, right?
It was. It is.
Yeah.
Still is.
and making it a staple in your market center. And you could run it over Zoom and do it hybrid if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it. We had to do whatever we had to do during COVID. I think the best way to run it is get them together, eyeball to eyeball, belly to belly, and practicing and engaging. And this is a good way to get people back in the room too, very intentionally. Now, here's what I want you to know. Right now, before COVID, we pivoted bold from transactional to relational. And the database components that are in bold, about 90% of the database things in bold that today have come from never-ending referrals. And so when you're running this in the market center, now, by the way, it's only about 30% of our content. And so what you're doing is you're kind of creating a good prep for bold for people that might be, getting ready to do that down the road and haven't. It's a really powerful follow-up if, you've had bold in your market, and then what happens about 4 weeks or 6 weeks after they take bold? Do they stop doing the stuff? Yeah. And this would be a perfect place to navigate them to, is right back into a room, right back into a weekly accountability over 6 weeks. And you could actually put people on teams with this if you chose. Tammi, is that something y'all did?
Yes, that's one of the things we did.
Good,
Yep.
Perfect. And then I don't know if you want to do the 6 weeks in 3, but we'll figure that out for you, right? So there's that. So guys, that's the program, and it really it was designed to fix this issue. And my feeling is, I think Tabby has it right. I think that doing this just once, twice a year, you can do that. Do it at least twice a year, and then really make it an event. I think if you just do it once and they don't bring it back, you're not creating. We have to create a database culture today. If we're going to win the market of the future, we really have a choice. We're either going to be stuck buying leads from somebody else who's working the people that don't have a relationship because agents didn't build relationships, or we're going to put the property tech people out of business because we built an army of agents that went out and adopted mind share with their fair share of people. And I really think we kind of have an obligation to our agents and industry to do that. That's the only way they're going to have a predictable business. And you can hear I'm a little passionate about it. I get kind of hangry around the whole idea of getting dependent on outside companies, because if you've been around this industry a while, you see how that plays out over time. We saw it with the relo industry. The commissionectomy just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we can't afford that in a time where we're likely to see commission compression as well down the road. And our best way to win this game is to go do it on this field and create an army of database warriors, folks, who are going to do this. And, Garrett, you spoke to it really well, is that we think of never-ending referrals it is checkers, not chess. I don't know how to play chess. I know how to play checkers. And this is about equipping your agents to play the checkers version of relationships and databases. So what questions do you have? I want to answer your questions. Let's see if we've got anything in the chat. Mary Atkins Bell uses DTD2 to communicate with their agents. Nice. I'm not surprised because you're always on systems. Yeah. Questions, thoughts, ahas. If you think this will help you, give me a thumbs up. Give me a virtual thumbs up in your in the window here. All right, I'm seeing some of those. Okay. Joey, how about you guys? Is this going to work in your market center, Joey Haley? All right, there he is. He's got a room full of folks over there. How you doing, guys? Perfect. And Zoe, thanks for being with us there in Louisville. I tell you, everybody always says it's Louisville, but it's Louisville.
That's great.
Home of the Derby. All right, guys, questions for me?
Steve, I have a question. This is
Please.
Joanne Coghill from Chicago area.
Hi.
And I've been with your Never Ending Referrals, the $39 a month for probably a year now, and just love it and love the extra stuff you guys throw in all the time and your experiences. So I'm just wondering if, the program you just described would be good in the Market Center for the new people and maybe on people that haven't capped yet. But I think up from there, they enjoy your weekly things. Were you thinking of any? I mean, it's $39. It's still very reasonable, but I'm wondering if if our office could do. Is there a way to sign up everybody? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just those things are all individual, and we'd say, hey, join in. If you want to drive people to our individual program, you can do that. We actually start Monday back at session 1. And yet here's the interesting thing is what you can do at the Market Center level is, and we've got certain tech segments that are within each, and we've got tutorials and, and by the way, we have weaved into this Market Center edition, clips of interviews of people, of top agents that are applying this and how they apply it in their business. In the affirming and validating, we bring in Kara Mole from Language of Sales, and she really just adds massive value. And so facilitating this in a Market Center, it's the cohesiveness you create within the Market Center of people speaking this language. In our Market Center, everybody knows what DTD2 is. And every week it's on the Facebook page, what the 2-letter group is. And there's conversations around it. And if we're going to change the language in a Market Center, it's best fostered at the local level. And, certainly send people to us and we'll do our thing with them. And by the way, what I do want to say about facilitating this, and thank you, Joanne, is that it's best facilitated by the same person. I know with like Ignite, sometimes we'll have a person facilitate, one lesson, then somebody else. Getting to see the progress of the room, experiencing who the contributors and the are, and fostering an environment of safety in that room and vulnerability leads to tremendous growth. And what I would just say is whoever's facilitating this, and many times the first time you do it in the Market Center, it's, the PC coach. And by the way, it could be a great way to attract people to your program. I'm going to tell you about another tool. By the way, I'm going to be sending y'all something in a follow-up email. I wrote a book called Rescue Dogs in Real Estate. And essentially it's a business fable, which really is about some of the key concepts of never ending referrals in a story, in an agent's experience of applying this. And it speaks in story form. And I'm going to send each of you, we just had the Audible version recorded, and I'm going to send you all the audio version of that in an email here probably later today, so you can access that. And this is another tool. We actually sell these by the case. If you want to do a book club or something to kind of keep a language going around this, there's an opportunity there. And we'll send you all more information on that. But it's just, we want to give you robust tools. In fact, we just got through sending out a bunch of these to some R1s to have a conversation about coming to check out our coaching program. And we're experimenting with using it as a recruiting tool. We can't tell you how it's going to work yet. We're just getting started with that. But then here's the interesting thing. I put this out there as a recruiting conversation, whether it's internally, come check out our coaching program, and making this a platform for your coaching, just like Tammi has, that it's an ongoing part of the experience. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And by the way, we do have discounts for multi-market center. And if you've got multiple market centers that you want to apply this to, it's going to be $13.98 per market center, less a discount per market center that you're doing it in. And you just go to info@neverendingreferrals.com and we can give you the details on that if you wanted to apply this at the multi-market center level at the same time. Other thoughts, questions? So Joanne, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there's a different opportunity to create a database language and culture that might get lost if you just send them to us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And did you do all the videos?
Tammy and I.
Yeah, okay. So that's,
Yeah.
I think it's your combination and just your knowledge and just the way you speak, and you're such a great instructor and make it interesting and fun that yeah, it'll be a success.
And by the way, there are laughs in there. It's not heavy. And it's heavy when it needs to be heavy. It's heavy when we're challenging them to get out of their stuck behaviors that aren't serving them. And yet it's light. We want to make learning fun. The lessons in the labs they do are very engaging. And I mean, I watched them. I wanted to do the Market Center edition myself. What I just did in my own market center that the one I'm affiliated here with in San Antonio, I ran Never Ending Referrals for market centers, the one you have available to you. And I've used the videos. And then I facilitated it like a facilitator because I wanted to be in your seat. And I asked them, I said, was it weird that I was up there when I'm right here? And they go, no, that was awesome. You know, the interplay between you and Tammy and what y'all do. And it's so conversational. So to your point, Joanne, that all comes through in that experience. Any other thoughts, questions? Teddy?
Well, just one success tip of us running it for so long is at the end of the sessions, and I'm going to have to rethink this now that it's longer sessions, we would have 30 minutes at the end where we would bring in one person from our market center who was great at that topic. So not only did we have Steve and Tammy and facilitating and the groups, at the end of that, we would also have a local expert that would share their highlights. So that, as Steve mentioned, then it tied it back to the market center, and they were already folks using the DTD2 system, and maybe they were following events and doing them the way that he talked about, or they were that expert. So it was a good like last 30 minutes kind of mastermind with the local person doing it. So.
Well, and when you get, thank you for that. And what happens too, when you get more people doing business this way and they understand how it works, now you can actually maybe start taking these people that are on this path and say, okay, we're going to do an event, you know, on, you know, May 30th, that's going to be a shred day. And by the way, everybody, here's a graphic to put in your email. Here's a, you know, the conversation you might have around this. And you do an event that now, instead of one person having to host an event, you do it for everybody in the program or everybody in the market center. And now it's easy for them to host a client event. They didn't have to do it all themselves. We did it together as a community. Like some market centers might do a pie day together rather than individually. So, all right, any other questions for me? Well, we'd love to have you on this journey, and feel free, I'm going to put my personal email in here. steve.s@kw.com. Whoops, I didn't, that went to didn't go to everybody. Hang on. And if you want to, you know, somebody asked about the individual program. To access the individual program, just go to neverendingreferrals.com and you can find out a little bit about it there, and you can find a link to join. It does say, I think it still says 6 sessions a month on the video there. What we do on the individual program is $39 a month. It's an ongoing minimum 5 months. Like I said, we've got people that Joanne been with us a couple of years, and because we're doing market of the moment scripts and things like that. And that might be after they go through at the market center, they might choose to get in the community and, you know, keep plugging into that over time. And maybe this is a way you get people started on that path, to get the conversation going. And then we can kind of help you keep doing the heavy lifting post this. And what we do is we feature on Monday, we do an interview at 12 o'clock Central, and then we follow that with one of the lessons of Never Ending Referrals. And the whole thing's about 90 minutes, and that's still divided into 8 sessions because we don't go 2.5 hours in that format. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you all first and foremost for being here today. Do watch for our email, because I am going to send y'all out that audiobook so that you can listen to that. And if there are any questions, please reach out to us directly. I'm sorry Tammi couldn't be with us today. She was attending some Bold business. And by the way, Tammi and I are both Bold coaches and Keller Williams University master faculty. So, we're very versed in, helping move people forward. That's what we do. And it's been a pleasure to spend a little time with y'all today. Any last thoughts? All right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending time with me on a Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.